Hi, Nnedi. How are you?
I am fine.
Good.
How are
It's
you?
good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Or maybe third or fourth of these. It's always nice to talk to you about your new books.
Yep.
But I think you're going to start today.
So I'm just going to talk a little about Death of the Author. Okay, so first of all, the title. I always feel like I have to explain the title. So the title, it was inspired by the essay called The Death of the Author by French scholar Roland Barthes. And really at the crux of it, this essay it's an essay where, I guess at the heart of it, it's about separating the author from their audience, from readers, right? I think the phrase goes, the author must die for the reader to live, right? So that whole theme plays very strongly throughout the book. It's also an essay that so I have a PhD in literature, and I also have a master's in literature and a master's in journalism. So lots of schooling, but throughout those years, I had to read that essay over and over and over again. And writing is very personal, so like all those things eventually, I'm not surprised that I ended up writing a book with this title. But also that essay was an essay, being a creative writer, being a writer who is very connected to her works, that essay always annoyed me, deeply annoyed me. But it is also an essay that I was constantly arguing with. I was arguing with it and just in conversation with it. I could see all the points, so all of that. So that's where the title comes from. The book itself, I've written over 20 books. I say over 20 because I've lost count. And this one is different, but very in the vein of what I write. The way that this book is different is that it is my most autobiographical, my most personal story. All of my stories are very personal to me. But this one, the way that I describe it is that with Death of the Author, or with my previous works, which are all speculative fiction, it was like writing or telling a story, directing something from off stage. And with Death of the Author, it was like I got on stage and I'm center stage. So I would definitely describe it as a metafictional novel. Yes, it's also an autofictional novel. So autofiction is a blend between the autobiography and fiction, very seamlessly blended. So it's very close. It is a story about Zahrah, who is a failed professor, failed writer, in this dark time of the soul. And this is not even giving much away, but in the dark time of the soul, this is all right in the beginning, she writes this book called Rusted Robots. And that book goes on to be a lot of things. So it's that, and Zahrah is paraplegic, Nigerian American. She's a writer. She's a professor. She's got all of these things that she's navigating. And she comes from a very insular family that is her family's a big deal. Let's just put it that way. Her family's a big deal. So there's that. Then there's also, you get chapters from her book, Rusted Robots. And so it's sort of a braided narrative where you have, it's people are saying it's two books in one. Yes, amongst other things. And so the book that she writes called Rusted Robots is about post-human robots. So where you get this very, I guess, literary type of narrative about this woman, Zahrah, who is, she's based on me, but there are things that she does that I would never do, so just know that. It's right in the first right in the first chapter. I don't do any of that. But so you've got that, but you've also got chapters from the actual book, Rusted Robots. And just one really quick thing. So this is the deluxe edition, and so much went into this, the cover and even the colors. There are little Easter eggs throughout all of this. The Ankara cloth this design was specifically made by an artist, and it's called Ankara. It's a West African type of cloth, and there's a character named Ankara in the book. But even in the cloth, you see circuitry that's woven through. There are zeros and ones. That's all very intentional. But also, there's this. So you've got the end papers. Those are Easter eggs as well. But then you take off the dust jacket, and you see a second cover. Yes. Rusted Robots. That's the book. That's the book that she writes, and I'm very proud of this because I was a big part of like the whole process. My publisher was completely down for this type of a book with literally 2 covers, and there's even more to it that I don't even want to give too much away. But when you read it, you'll understand like all of the details. But that's what. There's so much more to it, but that's an introduction to it. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. We share a publicist at HarperCollins, and she sent me like
awesome.
3 copies of that version of it. So I just kept giving them away. Here's this very beautiful copy of Nnedi's book.
Awesome.
So it's great. Yeah, she's fantastic. Maybe we'll start with the sort of the autobiographical, the autofiction, the metafiction.
Yeah.
I was thinking as I was reading it about how it is obviously a different book for you, but also thinking myself, like I'm partly a fiction writer because I don't want to write about myself, or if I write about myself, I lie, and if I write about a made-up person, I tell the truth, right?
That's about right.
I was sort of curious, because you've written some nonfiction about yourself as well, but I was sort of curious how you created like the separation between you and Zelu as well, because I think for me it's like, how do you push them into being their own person instead of yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't even know if I ever did that. I don't even know if there's really a separation per se.
Right.
Like I feel very connected to Zelu.
Yeah.
There are, but like I said, there are things that woman does that I would never do. And as I was writing her, she was doing those things, and I'm like, don't do that. I don't want to deal with that. Oh my gosh. But I've always had, even with my other works, I'm the type of writer who my characters talk to me, and my characters do things that I don't expect them to do, and things that I don't necessarily want them to do. In my book, Who Fears Death, there's something that main character does where I remember as I was writing it, I was like, no, don't go in there. Okay, is she gonna leave now? Oh, she's still there. Oh, she hasn't left yet. Like, I remember that weird feeling like that it was a disconnect. It really was. It was almost like I was just writing this thing and I had no control of the story. So yeah, I mean, that's how I've always written. So I always, like, I don't need to kind of pull myself away because it's like my characters are separate from me regardless, and they'll just, and I know I've written over 20 books, and I trust that process, and I know that they're going to do whatever they're going to do. Yeah. And I just don't worry about it at this point.
As soon as you were you disclaimed a couple of times that there's things she does in the first chapter that are not you. And I remember I used to, like in grad school, I'd write a short story by immediately having the character do something I would never do, and then I'd be like, "What's this person's deal?" Right? You know, that separation is so important.
But do you worry that people will think that that's you?
Not most of the time, because the characters are so maybe more extreme. My second novel was it's set in Michigan, where I'm from, and takes place in Detroit. And the character, I'm not from Detroit, and I wanted to have like an outsider point of view, so it was, not to speak for other people. And so the character is kind of from a town like mine. He has some details that are maybe similar to mine, but very different person. But when I borrowed my dad's copy one time to give a reading, he had underlined every detail from our real life in pencil.
See?
And it was like, it was the most terrifying copy of my book to sort of handle. And I didn't realize I was giving a reading using it, and I didn't realize that. Every time I turned a page, I was like, oh my God, Dad knows. He knows I did these things. Your daughter's here, well, probably writing a book, of course. And it's very funny to be read by your family when you're a little more personal.
Yes. It's an interesting experience, and it's interesting what they see. Yeah. And sometimes they'll see things that you don't. It's a little uncomfortable.
Often he's asked, like, did you mean this detail to be about us? And I'm like, no, but you missed the one that I did mean to be about you.
But also when you look at it, when they're like, oh, what about this right here? And then you look at it and you're like, oh, they've seen something that you didn't see. But they're the ones who are right.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. Which is, of course, the lovely thing about books actually coming out and being read by people, right?
Agreed.
So great. I was also thinking as I was reading Death of the Author about your nonfiction book, Broken Places and Outer Spaces, which really is kind of your own journey with paralysis and how that eventually led to you writing science fiction. And there's a, I mean, I put my glasses on. In that book, you write, what we perceive as limitations have the potential to become strengths greater than what we had when we were normal or unbroken. When something breaks, something greater often emerges from the cracks. And of course, reading that, I thought, like, that's also a pretty good summary of Zailu's personality in some way. And I guess I'd love to just hear you talk a little bit more about, like, how your strengths as a writer have emerged in part from what other people might perceive as setbacks or limitations or struggles. I think that's true of most writers. It's sort of we write out of our wounds and our difficulties. And I'd just be curious for other writers in the audience maybe to hear how those things have shaped sort of your trajectory as a speculative fiction writer.
Yeah, I mean, I had, so Broken Places and Outer Spaces, that was so central to so many of everything, and it's so connected to Death of the Author. There's actually a chapter in it, and I wrote it like, what was that, 2014 or something like that? Yeah, it's been a while. And there's a chapter in it called Rusted Robots.
So like I didn't remember that. That's great.
It's all connected. It's all connected. But that seems to be a reoccurring theme that this idea of taking those things that are challenges, obstacles that could break you and making something from them. I think for me, that literally comes from that experience in Broken Places and Outer Spaces. I was a paralyzed athlete, and that's why I wrote that book, because it's hard to explain. It's a lot to explain. I had not written anything creatively before I had this surgery for my scoliosis. So I was an athlete, semi-pro tennis player, track star, all of that, and then I had to have this surgery. And when I was right after my freshman year at the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, and I was supposed to be back on the tennis court. Everything's supposed to be fine, a few months recovery and back to normal. But I was in the 1% who has this surgery where they were supposed to straighten out my spine and then fuse the bones. And there's a 1% chance of paralysis, and I woke up paralyzed from it. So that was really that moment of breaking. Yeah. And I had never written anything creatively until the first few days of that situation, because I was losing my mind, and it was the only way that I could hold on. And I had a copy of If you
had a copy of Rusted Robots, that would have been very impressive.
No, there's a reason why I said that. Okay, so I had a copy of Isaac Asimov's I, Robot. Yeah. And I was in too much pain to read it, and instead I started telling the story to myself on the edges. That's how I started writing. That was literally the moment where I started, where I was the one who wrote the story. I'd never done that before. And that's funny because the second cover here, they used iRobot for the template for that.
That's cool.
Yeah, like all the layers are just they were intentional. But yeah, so that was how I discovered writing. And like, there's just something in that, this idea of I was broken, and I know some people don't like me, using that term, but it's okay, I mean, it's not, for me,
it's your self-description anyway, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's just the way that I describe it. It's not a negative for me. Right. So I was broken, and I started creating. And that was really what brought me, because when I started writing, it was like, right before that, it felt like there was black and darkness that was descending on me, all around me in that hospital bed. It was like, once everyone went home, and family has to go home at night, and I was suddenly there with this body that was used to be able to run fast, jump high, do all of these things, and I couldn't feel from the waist down. It was like, it was just disappeared, and I had to deal with that. And the only way that and the darkness was setting in, because having something like that happen to a very athletic person who's always been athletic all their lives is enough to break someone's mind. And when I started, the story that I started writing was about a woman who could fly. And when you look back, it makes sense. When you can fly, you don't have to walk. It's clear. But I wasn't thinking about that. I was just writing this, whatever was coming from me. And the moment I started writing that story, it was like the darkness retreated. So this idea of taking something, and also in that moment, it was like discovering storytelling, like the power of storytelling, the beauty of storytelling, and most importantly, the joy of storytelling. Like there's something so wonderful about being able to tell the story, and then like pulling from this whatever to get these ideas and just putting them on paper and then seeing it come to fruition. There's something so intoxicating and beautiful about that. And I know that I don't know if I would have discovered that if that hadn't happened. So like this idea of taking something that is terrible and then turning it and creating it and having it become something that's beautiful and nurturing and like probably one of the greatest discoveries of my life. So I think that's where that sentiment comes from. It was just this core thing that happened to me. So you see that theme happening. Like I keep revisiting that theme in all of my books. This idea of taking something that's terrible and looking at it, looking straight at it, and therefore making it something beautiful.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that, Nnedi. Thank you. I think I feel really similarly. I actually started writing probably about the same age, and I think also in kind of a rough part of my life. It feels very like it was the thing I needed to have in the same way. And I think in interviews you've talked about, for this book, you've talked about like when there's something that you're afraid of, then you have to write it, or if there's something you want. And I think we can talk a little bit about that. I think I feel really similarly, like you should write what you know, or you should write maybe what you want to know. And I think for a long time I thought you should write what you're afraid to know, right? Like the thing that you're kind of not looking at, the thing you're anxious about it because you're not paying attention to, you're like writing this book, writing about like climate change. There's like, I had more climate anxiety before I started. Like writing it was like, I'm going to face into my anxiety. And, that was awful. But I felt better for having done it, right? Like going to the doctor when you're
cathartic.
sick.
Yeah, that I think fear for creatives is a necessity. I hate to have to say that because it's not pleasant and it's not fun. But like having the fear and then facing it though. And I think writing it through, looking at climate change and just really looking at it can be disturbing. And then when you're writing about it, I don't know about you, but I know when I'm writing about something, I'm there. I'm there, and so I don't want to be there, but I'm there. So when you're facing it, you're literally facing it, and there is something cathartic about it. There's something very brave about it too. You know what can happen with climate change, and writing it, just putting it down, and like being there. It's like being in VR and opening your eyes, and you're you're in the middle of it, and you're facing it, and you're seeing that how bad it can get, and I don't know. I think part of the cathartic part about it is seeing it through. Yeah, absolutely. When you see it through. And I mean, sometimes you find that it's possible to deal with, okay, I've seen it through, I've seen it to the worst end. I've looked into the abyss and I'm still standing. I think there's something to that too, but I think it's really important for creatives to look into the abyss. I mean, but I also think that there needs to be balance. I don't know if you've had this experience where it's just unpleasant and you feel like you're damaging yourself and by looking and dealing with these really difficult topics. I mean, you can go too far with it too. So I think
I would agree. I think my second book was like the most emotionally difficult maybe book I wrote, and I got done with them like, if this is what writing novels makes you feel like, I'm not gonna write any more books.
Exactly.
Like I was like it was not a freeing kind of catharsis, right? It was just like good work, I guess, doing that terrible thing to yourself for several years. And it's funny as you're saying that too. Just thinking about you being an athlete, and I think for myself as well, the athletics is also a way of like facing what you fear, right, and trying to do something you can't do, and like there are different arenas for similar kinds of testing. I guess I'm also thinking as a reader about catharsis, and like Anne Carson talks about how like a character goes through a terrible thing so that you don't have to go through it. You get to experience those emotions, but you don't have to like literally do the things yourself.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of your books handle really difficult material or difficult events in people's lives, and part of the pleasure of them really is in some ways having someone else go into like the darkness for you, and you get to stay at home in your reading chair.
Yeah. I mean, it's the playground of the imagination. And I like that idea of taking readers into, like, taking their hand and taking them into the dark.
Here's a cave.
Yes, exactly. Let's see what's in it, But, I mean, I know for me as a reader, I enjoy that. I really, really enjoy that experience of going in and, just walking in the shoes of the character.
Yeah.
I like that, and I think part of it also is that that's why I don't need to like the character. I also don't need to relate.
Yeah.
Like I'm one of those who I don't need to relate to the character. I like to just get in there and experience whatever the writer wants me to experience. I think there's something freeing about that, but there's also something, it's just really, I think it's really important.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to just have that feeling of I don't know, I mean, for lack of a better way to put it, being someone else.
Yeah.
Like literally being someone else. And I think that's one of the beauties of specifically literature. I know those who make other kinds of art are going to be like, well, no, you can get that in this too. But like, there's something about when you're reading, like, literature takes you far in. It's like when you're sitting and reading a book, it's almost like hypnosis.
Yeah.
You're not moving. You're staring at something, and it just lulls you, and it's taking you somewhere else. You're literally gone.
Yeah.
And I mean, when it comes to experiencing the world from the point of view of someone else, I feel like literature does it, not the best, but maybe
the best, though. I think we can say it's best. It's probably
it's
fairly
one of the best. Okay, fine, the best.
I think that co-creating thing you have to do when you read that's different than watching a movie, right?
Yeah.
Where you have to do half the work. So and of course that like direct interiority is so different than other things. Yeah. It's great. I'd like to talk a little bit about rusted robots. Really, one of my favorite literary tropes is like the story within a story. Like it's just always so pleasurable. And so Zahrah starts writing this novel, or writing her novel either early in your novel. And I knew that was part of the book. I was really interested to read it. And I think as I was reading that part, I've read a lot of your novels, I've read a lot of your nonfiction. I talked to you a lot of these kind of things, and I kept thinking, in the same way that Zahrah is like, not you, but obviously shares things with you. It's like a shadow universe version or something. Rusted Robots also is kind of like, is your fiction and isn't. Like it doesn't really sound like any of your other books, but it's also about the kind of things you write. Like the robots are kind of culturally Igbo. Is that the right way to say it? They're culturally? Yes. But they're not humans, but they're the culture. The masquerade plays a part. Some of these things are part of your book. And I was just really curious about how you felt writing her novel, I guess, because it is different but same.
It was terrifying. It was like because
pretending to write a novel is harder than writing a novel.
It was weird. Yes, yes, it was. It was weird. Writing this book in general was weird because like I don't outline. So like the idea of me writing a novel within a novel just seems absurd. Like I would never have thought I would write that because it's very structured. All the chapters move in a certain way, but like I don't outline. So I literally just sit down and start. and then whatever it is what it is. I don't know if I'm going to write a novel. I don't know if it's going to be a short story, novella. I don't know. I don't write to genre. It's just going to be whatever it is. So I sat down, I started writing this woman named Zelu. The first chapter was that first chapter, which does not make Zelu look very good. I will say that is not. She's just a mess. So I'm writing this thing, and I knew I was writing about this character who writes this book called Rusted Robots. I knew that. And I must have written 100 pages. Yeah. And all through that 100 pages, I'm just writing this woman's life and how she goes through everything that she goes through writing this book, and the success of the book and all the perils that come along with it. And in the back of my head, as I'm writing it, I'm like, okay, she writes this book that so many people respond to, that becomes this massive cultural moment. And I'm like, at some point I have to show my hand. You can't just talk about how great this book is and not show any of it. But I didn't want to, because I'm like, this is a book that is literally doesn't have any human beings in it.
Right.
And it's about robots. Yeah. You've got sentient humanoid, and when I say humanoid, they don't have flesh. They're like metal. You've got those roaming the earth. Like, basically, humanity has died off, and what's left behind is what human beings left behind, the machines. And so you've got human robots, you've got AI, bodiless AI, you've got other machines, like you've got rowboats, so these boats that live on the ocean or live, so like, I'm like, how do I even, what is that? Yeah. I remember thinking that, I'm like, I don't want to write that. I don't even know how to write that. I've never even written robots like that. I don't know. And so I kept avoiding it. I'm like, I'll just focus on Zelu. And then that voice in my head just kept saying, okay, you got to show your hand. You got to show your hand. And so at one point I was just like, fine, pause, and let me just write a chapter of this thing. And I started writing a chapter, and it turned out to be what's called Scholar. I think it's like chapter 3. And as soon as I dropped into that voice, Ankara's voice, I was like, this is great. I love this. I don't know what it was, but it's like, there's something so liberating about writing robots that weren't human, that weren't like flesh. They're like immortal. And it was just, I fell in love with the world. It was like the whole world of that, this post-human world, and it was in Nigeria. Just came into vision, so it's like, once I started, it just rolled out. And that was when I found myself writing 2 books at the same time. Yeah. So I'm like writing Rusted Robots and then Zelu's story. And, I've done this enough where I let the stories be whatever they are. And so I didn't worry about it. I was like, okay, I might be writing 2 books at the same time. And they'll just be 2 books. And that's just really weird, but I'm not going to worry about it. I'm having so much fun doing this. I'm not going to worry about it. But writing Rusted Robots, though, was a joy. It was the characters, and I found that there was something about like, this idea of, and I didn't even mean for the stories to kind of braid together. I was not even trying to do that. It just naturally happened. Like I said, I am a pantser. I fly by the seat of my pants. I don't outline. But suddenly I'm writing this story about these robots, and then there's the AI, Ijele character, who doesn't have a body, and I'm, I've always been focused on this idea of the body since my paralysis, all of that, body, like how it affects the way that you move through the world. And so like I'm writing about these AI, and it just made sense, this idea of they don't have bodies, and their whole, the way that they look at life or just existing without bodies, and the way that they view having a body in a different way that we do, it was really refreshing to explore that. And then you've got the human robots who are humanoid, and they revere everything about human beings, especially their storytelling and this idea of, I keep my body. My body is so important to me that like I only replace a part if it's not no longer work. So this idea of the body just naturally came forth. It was really interesting writing Rusted Robots. It made sense to me in this way. It was, to come back to this idea of writing your fears, I think part of me was afraid of writing that kind of story because I'd never done it. It was like, I mean, I'm a science fiction writer, but that's not, I don't do that, you know? And so I kind of moved into a new territory when I was writing that, and it kind of unlocked something, you know, unlocked a new thing, a new way of writing, a new way of envisioning things, story, all of that, you know. So it was at first it was scary,
right?
And it was not something I wanted to do, and then I just fell in love with it.
I can really hear your joy when you're talking about it too.
Yes,
You're always excited when you're writing, but I can really hear your joy talking about this book in general. It's really great. I'm thinking a couple of things. One is, you know, we talked about like giving a character who's kind of like you, like things you wouldn't do to make them different than you. And even kind of writing about robots as a way of doing that, right? Zahlu's not writing a Nnedi Okorafor book because it's about robots. It's not about people, right? You know, it's like an interesting, in a way. And now, if you like writing robots and you write a robot novel, you'll be influenced by Zahlu's novel.
Yeah.
And you'll have this weird, like kind of like twisty, you know.
Oh my gosh.
Not to put that in your head and drive you crazy at the desk.
Now. Okay, I'll be thinking about that for the rest of the week. Yeah. Oh, wow.
It's good to have something else to stare into the dark and be weird about, you know, pet fears and stuff. Well, I was going to ask you a little bit if you wrote them in parallel, but obviously it kind of emerged from the other in that way. As you were sort of editing, revising, do you feel like it's possible? Does Rusted Robots like stand alone? Is there like a secret version where you have just Rusted Robots, or does it really require sort of Zahlu to pull them together? Are they?
That's a good question.
And maybe this is also a Death of the Author, Barth's kind of question. Like, is Zahlu and Rusted Robots separate? Are you separate from Death of the Author?
See?
Who are we? Who are these books?
Exactly.
Like, let's get into this Thursday. Let's have therapy. Let's, you know,
exactly.
It's so hard.
All that. Seriously, all that. Because like, and at one point I was like, why did I name my book this? You know, because I just that essay just has been haunting me. It's been haunting me because like this essay that I have disliked for so many years, after a while I started thinking, did I, you know, this book is almost an argument for the essay.
Yes, I agree.
I didn't even do that on purpose, and so I see it, and it's just, I don't know, it makes me feel weird.
Yeah.
It makes me feel weird. It all makes me feel weird. I don't know. It's like this, what do they call it? A Mobius strip? It totally makes sense when they use that term, because I'm like, this, okay, I didn't want to do this, but I did, and do I separate the two? And is Rusted Robots separated from Zahlu's story? I mean, there are some spoilers in there. So
we can't say too much about it. Yeah. This becomes like a Stephen King darker half kind of situation, real easy. So watch out for Zahlu when you walk into your car. It's not good.
Great reference there.
Yes, right. Really, you have to really know. Yeah. In a profile for the book, you were quoted as sort of wondering about the genre of the novel, saying in the profile, "Oh my God, what have I done? How are people going to comfortably categorize this?"
Yes.
And even before I read it, I was thinking a little bit about that question. That is something different for you, and it made me think of Samuel Delany's novel *Dark Reflections*, which is maybe his only like realist novel. It's autobiographically based on his life of a gay black writer in New York City. Shares a lot of details with Delany, and it's like Delany's like it's a realist novel. He's like, you know, but there's this fan base that interprets it as a science fiction novel, and they had to make up all these like deep readings of the book to figure out how this is like a secret sci-fi novel that Delany has written. And I don't know. I mean, I'd be curious to see how people have reacted, or even what some of those like worries about that reaction being, because it is interesting if you swerve your thing, whether readers come with you or they understand, or if they follow weirdly because they've read your other books.
Yeah, I mean that's first of all, that's a great example.
Yeah.
I say follow weirdly. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that because I think it's been very confusing for people, and it kind of makes sense that it's confusing because, I mean, I don't want to give anything away about the book, but there are science fiction elements in Zahlu's story.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So it's like, but it's autofiction. It's very much based on, like, Zelu is a version of me, I guess you could say, with some bad habits. And the family is my family.
Right.
That is my family. First chapter is named Chinyere. It's an interview with Chinyere. My oldest sister's middle name is Chinyere. Yeah. So it's like, it's all there. There are, there's a part where Zelu is learning something, and I was taking directly from when I had to relearn how to walk. I mean, like, that's how I was able to write about that so in such a detailed way. That wasn't research. That was like experience. So there are all sorts of things in there. And then there's like, Zelu's story is in the very near future. You've got autonomous, we have Waymo here already.
Yeah.
But you have basically Waymo in Chicago.
Yeah.
That's unheard of right now.
Like 2 years from now.
Yeah, exactly. Well, hopefully.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you've got all those things. So it's just layers of, I know, okay, I don't know. It's hard to, like, it's impossible to categorize.
Right.
The book is impossible to categorize. And I remember being very, very curious about how people would deal with it. I've had my Broken Places in Outer Spaces, it's shelved in the science fiction section.
Right. Yeah.
So so that whole idea of everything I do is science fictional. Like, I can't. It's not that I don't want to get away. From that. At the same time, if it's called science fiction, it's a box, right?
Yeah, you bring
and those things that don't,
right? Yeah.
But those things that don't fit in the box are ignored.
Yeah.
So it feels, it's reductive in that way, and I think that those are the perils of it. So for example, what has happened with Death of the Author is that it's been categorized as science fiction. That's it. And I'm like, okay, so if somebody who thinks, oh, science fiction, and opens up the first few chapters, they're going to be like, where are the robots?
Yeah, where are the robots?
Where are the robots, and where's the science fiction? It reads like a literary novel. And then literary readers, when they get to the robot chapters, I'm taking their hand and taking them into a science fictional world. But I just feel like, I don't know, I wish there was, I don't like categories.
Yeah, same. Absolutely. Yeah.
I feel like they just reduce everything. Yeah. There's a whole cultural element to this. This is like Zelu and her Nigerian American family. That is a huge part of the book. And her dealing with her Nigerian Americanness, that's a huge part of the book. But if we're just calling it science fiction, that is not going to be talked about. It's that's a major, I mean, you see the Ankara pattern, that's the thing. Like, this is just, it's like so many different things in one. You can't ignore it. You see the silhouette. So even on the cover, like a lot of I guess, African novels, there's like a cliche of the silhouette.
Yeah. Absolutely,
you've got the silhouette, and you've got the Ankara pattern on there. It's and I like that. For this one, I'm like, give me the cliche. So you've got the cliche on there, but then you've got the circuitry and the zeros and ones in there.
Yep,
so
absolutely.
And then you've got a freaking robot, like on the other side of it, like on the actual book. So it's all of those things. All of those things are important. The science fictional stuff, the diasporic stuff, the disability stuff.
Absolutely.
The commentary on publishing and the teaching world. All of that. It's doing so many things. But like, it's not that I was trying to.
Yeah.
This is my most personal novel.
Yeah.
This novel is the most like me, and I'm a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I don't fit in boxes. And that's why I feel like, I don't know, categories just, they reduce everything. So calling this just science fiction, I'm like, okay.
It occurs to me that with the packaging of the book, where you have the maybe more literary cover on the dust jacket, you have Russ Rowett's underwear. Yeah. In 10 years, when the dust jackets all get inevitably lost in the used bookstore,
I love it.
People will pick it up in a completely different way than they're picking it up today, right?
Yep.
It'll be really, that's kind of great. It's like
love it.
Like a trap you've laid for the future. It's nice. Yeah.
Totally true.
The future has nothing to do. They'll need these things, so it's good. Are we leaving time for audience questions as well? Should we?
Sure.
I think that would be great.
Yeah. Well, maybe we should stop and do that now. If people would like to ask Nnedi questions, that would be a good time for it. Please. Yes, sir.
Yes, Alan.
So 2 questions, one I always ask.
Okay.
What are you reading right now? The second is, since you've been living in the desert for a while, what's your relationship to like the animals?
Oh my.
And the land?
Great question. And it's kind of related to the book that I'm reading now. My daughter's smiling here because she knows. She knows. Okay, so the book that I'm forgetting who the author is, but she was an actress on 6 Feet Under. It's called Turning to Birds. And it's all about birding. I love birds. Even on the way here, we saw Harris's hawk on one of the light poles. Yeah, since moving here, I love the desert. I've always loved it. If you read, like, most of my books seem to touch the desert in some way. You know, they're like set in it. I've loved the desert since I was, for multiple reasons. My mom was born in Jos, Nigeria, and Jos is in the northern part of Nigeria, and it's very arid there. And so I grew up hearing stories about dust devils and just desert environment. So that really kind of just piqued my curiosity. And then also there was one trip in my teens where usually when we fly to Nigeria, it's always, when you fly over the Sahara Desert, it's always at night. And then there was one trip that we took where we flew over it during the day. So first of all, at night, the sky over the Sahara is amazing. It looks like if you look at a drop of water under a microscope, things just moving. It's just absolutely stunning. But this day, we flew over during the day, and I remember looking down, and it looked like another planet. Yeah. I was like, oh, I want to be in that. So that's always been, and then the major thing that made me want to move here, because I specifically wanted to move to Phoenix. I had like a really profound experience at Arcasanti. Yeah, I was at Arcasanti, and I was at a science fiction writers retreat. And there was it was like October or something, and I was coming. And I'm from Chicago, and it was cold, and I like the heat. So it was hot here. Got here, and I remember getting out of the airport and just being like, "Oh, this is great! Love this!" And so we got to Arcasanti, and I just wanted to be outside in the heat, in the sun, and we've had a 15-minute break. So I went outside, left everybody, went outside, and just sat on this rock facing the desert. And just was still. I just wasn't moving. I was just absorbing the sunshine. And I kid you not, in that 15 minutes, there was a lizard that came and sat on one side. And then there was a large eastern, I love bugs, so that's why I know what kind of grasshopper this is, a large eastern lubber grasshopper that came over the cliff and then just stood in front of me, and then a butterfly that landed on this side. And I was like, oh God, it was just, oh my God. And that was it. I fell in love, but it took like 3 years before it clicked in my mind that, okay, I'm moving here. Yeah. So that was that connection already. So over the summer, I'd been on my book tour, 4-month book tour for Death of the Author, and I needed a break. And I had some months where I was home, and I just took that that time to just start doing these walks. And I lived near South Mountain, and it was like these 1.5-hour walks. And in those walks, I got to know all the creatures, where they all lived, what they all did, because I would go at the same time. I saw this owl 4 times, and I saw this fence lizard. I know what it did at sunset. So I just got really close to everything. And so just got the understanding of the rhythm of the land. Just felt really close in a way that I've never felt before. It was really profound. And I mean, to make a long story short, it's just going to be infused in my stories. Just know that there are going to be a lot of hummingbirds and hawks and stuff in my forthcoming stories. But yeah.
Please, in the back.
So you talk about this, you talk about this joy, occasional joy when you're coming from writing about this beings with bodies like robots, into writing things without bodies, like AI. I just want to know a little bit more about like what is in that genre exactly. And also just like, do you feel like those bodiless beings are more simplified form being or a more complicated?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that in writing about robots, there's writing about robots and AI and different types of robots, because like the AI would inhabit bodies, but they would have a different relationship to those bodies. They'd be able to discard the bodies very easily. They would have asymmetric bodies that were only specifically in that shape to do specific things. You know, they didn't have an attachment to it. In writing about just the different relationships to the body with these robots, I think it allowed me to explore some thoughts that I was having about like how I related to my own body. Like, because after my paralysis, once I started walking again, I didn't learn how, like, the way that I learned how to walk was different. That was where that chapter, Rusted Robots, came about in my memoir. What I was talking about was this idea of the way that I walk is more robotic. It's more conscious. I have to think about lift leg, put it forward, lean forward. Every step that I take is conscious. And so I had this, I started feeling I had this close relationship to robots. Because, you know, robots, they're everything is programmed. You know, they're conscious about everything that they're doing. So in writing robots, I got to explore that idea. Like, I got to write characters who live like that. That's how they exist, and I could relate closely to that. And then there are the AIs who have a different relationship with body. There's a disconnect. In that, I was able to kind of explore this idea that once I learned how to walk again, and the way that I walk is more robotic, there's also a weird disconnect that I have, where, because they're like, one of the things that I lost was my proprioception. My proprioception is very poor, which is your ability to know where you are in space. So with my legs, sometimes if it's dark and I don't see my legs, I won't know where they are. Sometimes they'll feel like they're over there. It's really weird. And so I'll have to like either turn the light on or shine a flashlight and see, and that reconnects me to my legs. So it's a slight disconnect, you know? And so there's this idea of the AI being disconnected from body. So they have a body over here, they move it, but they're separate from it. You know, so in writing the AI, I'm able to explore that idea in a more extreme way, and just kind of it's like looking at an idea from different angles. You know, and so I think that's where the joy was in writing them, is because like when else could I explore that if I'm writing about human beings? I can't explore it in the same way. And that's one of the beautiful things about writing speculative fiction too. You can explore things in this way that is not as accessible in writing, I guess, quote unquote realistic fiction. I don't like that term, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you for your talk so far,
Yeah.
the conversation. I wanted to ask, sorry.
Yeah. Now I can see you.
I wanted to ask about, earlier I've read before your critiques of like Afrofuturism as a term and how you like to use African futurism, but also today you've talked a little bit pushing against genre or just being defined by genre. So I was curious how you see this text fitting into that African futurism genealogy, and then just generally how you see that African futurism today.
Yeah, it's, you know what's really interesting? I didn't see this as African futurist at all when I was writing it. And after I wrote it, I didn't. Because I don't think in terms of categories. You know, I mean, I know that I coined the term African futurism, and there's a whole thing behind all of that. There's a whole thing. And I understand the need for naming. When something has a name, people can see it. A lot of times when something doesn't have a name, you don't see it, you know? So there's that. So let's put that aside For me though, I don't like I said, I don't like labels. So when I wrote this, I wasn't thinking about this is an African futurist narrative. I was not thinking about that at all. And I remember when it came out, and my publisher put the African futurist label on it, and then everyone was putting the African future, like, oh, it's an African futurist thing. I was like, okay, here we go. We're doing all that. But at the same time, once again, it came back to that title again. Because now when I'm more separated from it, and I look at the book as what it is, and yeah, it is African future. You know?
Isn't there always where you're like denying the book as anything? You're like, I'm doing something no one has ever done. There's no genre. It's some of this stuff, and you're like, I will take my science fiction award now.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Right? You know, exactly. And what do you do? Like, how do you feel?
No, it's fine.
Like, what am I supposed to? I don't know. I feel like a hypocrite, but at the same time, I know why I felt that way.
Yeah.
And honestly, when I look at this book, it is like it's almost a template to how to write African futurist narratives. You know, like it's doing that. I don't know. It's a lot of things can be true at the same time, and also. Oh God, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but this is going to bite me.
Go for it, yeah.
It's going to come back and bite me, but I'm just going to say it anyway because that's how I feel right now in this moment. But the writer isn't always right.
Yeah, no, that feels obviously true.
Yeah, I know. I'm just,
also, I think Martha would agree.
But even about your own work.
Yeah, no, all the time, right? Absolutely.
Yeah. I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
It is sort of wild to be able to write like 20 books and then I'll be like, I don't know how I really did any of those.
That's so true.
I think we have time for maybe one more question. Yeah, please.
So I'm curious, when I read Octavia Butler's Parables, now I think we can look at the situation and be like, it was prophetic, but it even felt that way. And when I read Who Fears Death, it had the same sort of like mythological, prophetic air to me. And I'm curious if that's anything that comes through for you when you're writing. Like, do you ever have that sense of like echoes of the future possibly coming through?
Parable of the Sower is scary.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
I still can't read it. Like, I haven't been able to read it since 2016. Yeah.
It's weird to be in an adaptation of a book.
Right, it's kind of awful, I often wonder, I wonder how she felt when she wrote that.
Yeah.
Because, like, I don't know. I think as a writer, there are times where something's happening. Something's happening. You don't know exactly what it is, but it's something, and that it's profound. I know when that has happened to me, it's like my first inclination is to put it down and walk, kind of step away from it slowly, and then just not. I want to deny it. I'm a little startled by it, but you don't know. I don't think you know exactly what you're doing at least for me. The way that I write, I don't know what I'm doing at the time. I don't know. I'm just letting it come, and then whatever it will become later is what it will become. And I think over time I've gotten pretty comfortable with not worrying too much about that. But yeah, sometimes you have a sense of something. And when that something is there, it doesn't feel comfortable. It doesn't feel comfortable. I often wonder what Octavia must have felt with writing Parable of the Sower. That must have been a terrifying thing to write, but she still wrote it.
Yeah.
I think that is always there. But I just think that you don't really know fully what it is that you're doing. You have that feeling. It's that feeling, and it also feels very special. It feels like something is moving through you, and that's sort of, it's an honor even if it's a little bit scary. Yeah.
I love that way of saying that. It's an honor. I think that feels exactly right. That's really great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nnedi. It's always so a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
My pleasure.